Hi, I'm Dan Sidney. I'm a scientist in the research department at Tomotherapy, which is a medical device company in Madison. And I'll be talking a little bit about my work there, but I thought we'd go start sort of at the beginning, which for these purposes we'll say is college. In college, I majored in biochemistry, and I chose that major because I thought it would be a really good way to get a general science background. It had a lot of prerequisites in math and physics and biology and various chemistries. And, and so I thought like that would be a great way to get a well-rounded science education. And I think actually that was correct, that it did that for me. Although it didn't end up being the greatest fit for me in other ways. That really I'm more of an engineer at heart and stronger in engineering. And so when I went to grad school, actually before I went to grad school, I was thinking about what do people who have my major do when they finish, and by and large, the biochemistry majors in my program went to med school. But some of the problems I had with the major, that is to say, some of the areas where it wasn't a great fit for me, I thought would totally apply to medical school. And so I decided, that's not really what I want to do. And so the minority of people who had my major went to grad school, basically. It was about 20% of the department, I think, that went to grad school. And so I decided that was a good choice for me, and I went to grad school in engineering. I ultimately got a master's in mechanical engineering and a PhD in medical engineering. And when I was in grad school, I also looked ahead, like what do people, with this advanced training, what do they do? And in my PhD program, people did one of three things basically. About a third of them became academics, doing research and teaching in engineering. About a third of them went on to get an MD or got an MD in parallel with their PhD. And those people, by and large, went into clinical practice or clinical research situations. And then about a third of the people would go into industry, and in particular medical devices or similar kind of medical industries. And the research group that I was affiliated with in grad school had a bunch of people that were interested in that latter option. Almost everybody going through that research group was interested in getting into industry. And I guess being a sheep or something like that, I thought like that's for me too. And so after I graduated, I hooked up with a small medical device company, a startup. And it was actually founded by my doctoral supervisor, or co-founded by him. And it was a young, relatively early stage medical device company with great technology, and it was a really great experience in a lot of ways. Some of the things that, some of the things I think are kind of typical of these small and especially startup kind of companies are that people have to do a lot of different tasks, that there's more tasks to do than there are people to do them. So people have to double up or triple up. Everybody wears a lot of hats. And so it's exciting. There's always new and different things going on. And there's a lot of self-learning that takes place. In my particular case, I was involved in managing our software for our device. We had a device that measured tissue blood flow with an invasive probe, and the probe was connected to a monitor that had a lot of computation to sort of extract the blood flow measurement. And so I'm not really a software guy per se, but our algorithm was obviously embedded in the software, and that's sort of where I brought the most to the table, I think. But in addition to software, in addition to learning about programming, there was a regulatory component that you have to be disciplined about how you do your programming and document the design and so on and so forth. And so I learned a lot about that and led a lot in that area in that company. with a couple people that is to say, just a couple people in the company. It's just a tight group, and hopefully it's a good culture that people get along. And in my experience at that company, it was that way, which was fortunate. By and large, people got along well, and and we were believers in the product, which also helps a lot. I would hate to work in a company where I think that the product or service that we're making is really not that worthwhile. So we felt like we were addressing an important clinical need, a clinical need actually that nobody else was able to address as effectively as we were. So we were really helping. And another aspect that appealed to me about this was that felt we were really having a positive impact on society, or at least potentially, to the extent that we would be able to penetrate the market with our device. Literally, life and death decisions could be made based on the measurements coming out of our diagnostic device. So we could have that level of impact on people's lives. Then after a couple of years with this company, for personal reasons, I left the geographical area and moved to Madison. And so in Madison, I again was looking to work in medical device companies, and that's where I found my current professional home, TomoTherapy. So at TomoTherapy, we make an X-ray treatment device for radiation treatment of cancer, and it's a really great technology, totally state of the art as far as I'm concerned, and once again, it's really exciting to be at a place where we're trying to address life and death issues that people we're helping to treat people who without treatment a lot of them would not survive, and in some cases, particularly sort of complicated cases, our technology is extremely effective to the point where in some cases no other technology, at least radiation delivery technology, could be used in these complicated cases, and so it's a point of real pride that we can bring that to the table. So TomoTherapy is further along in its life cycle than my previous company was, and it's a much bigger technology, much bigger machine that we make, and it's a much bigger company infrastructure behind it. A lot more people. In the other company, a department was a person, and at TomoTherapy, a department is a lot of people, and there are whole departments at TomoTherapy that didn't even exist at the other company because the other company was just too small. And so to that extent, you're obviously more specialized in the work you do. But at TomoTherapy, there's a really good culture, a very collaborative culture, which is great. There's collaboration within departments and collaboration between departments, and then also even collaboration outside of the company. As I say, we have various clinical partners that we work with to do further science behind cancer treatment, further the engineering as well, helping them, learning what is it they need to do more effective treatment, and how can we answer those needs. Let's see. Both companies I worked at, while they were very different stages, very different technologies, very different cultures, both been really positive experiences, and some features that they both had were good people to work with, a good clinical need that we were looking at, good technology, and then also good intellectual issues that we were trying to address, that they're stimulating the mind. So those were a lot of the pieces I looked for, and I was fortunate that on both instances I was able to get that. Appreciate you listening, and I hope that this was helpful. Thank you very much.